All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining our session on collaborating on the future of open education in Australasia. I'm Ash Barber, an academic librarian and senior coordinator of the OER Collective at the Council of Australasian University Librarians. I'm also a co-convener of the ASCOLite Australasian Open Educational Practice Special Interest Group, or the OEPSIG for short, because it's a very long name. So I sit on both sides of this collaboration between the OEPSIG and the OER Collective. A quick visual description of me for accessibility. I'm a Caucasian woman with blonde hair wearing glasses. And my background is the open education colorful rainbow background with the Eyes on the Horizon script in the corner.
Hello, everyone. This is Mace Fataya. I'm the Learner Experience Design Manager at the University of Technology, Sydney, joining you here from UTS campus in Sydney City. To help with accessibility as well, I'd like to describe my appearance on the screen. I'm a middle-aged woman wearing headscarf and also wearing glasses. My background is actually a virtual background of the business school here at UTS, a unique architecture that is designed as scrunched up paperback. Now, we also co-lead the editorial team for the book, and which we'll be discussing with you today, Open Education Down Under. So I'm going to start with a quick housekeeping, and like to see thumbs up if you're happy with that. You will be able to access all the resources I'll be talking about today. There's a big QR code at the end of the presentation. We can download all the resources that we'll be mentioning. For people joining via Zoom, can you please keep your mic muted to minimize any distraction as possible? And during our presentation, you are most welcome to ask questions in the chat. If we have people in the room, also we'll have enough time at the end. Now, give me a thumbs up if you're happy with this. Can use the Zoom thumb up, and just also reminding you be able to use the captions for today for accessibility. Now, for today, our session will cover things that we hope that will go away with some practical tools and strategies for effective and sustainable collaboration on large scale open textbooks publishing projects. We also hope that we'll be able to understand the importance of regionally relevant and contextualize the stories, putting together into an open education storytelling or collection in that shows the practices and how this has been happening in our community. The last one that we also would like to show you some of the examples of open education work here in Australia. Now, what comes to mind when you hear Australasia? Now, I don't know about you, but for me, it was before coming to Australia in 2010, it was the beaches. Now, when I talk about Australasia, I also would like people to think about the power of the community that I've also seen here in this region, particularly in higher education institutions. And today we'll show you a good example of that. Now, before we go into the example and the work that we have done, we would like to present to you the problem that we have addressed here. One of the things that we have noticed from our experience as open education advocates is that open education case studies in the Australasian region are great. There are many of them, but they are actually fragmented. The well-known examples actually saturated in the North American context. If you do a quick Google search of open pedagogy examples, for example, the results will come up all North American centric. And this is something we would like to change. Not that we want to join these results, in other words. Open education practitioners also here are disconnected, and this is something that we have also noticed. And even though there was a great potential for crowdsourcing these efforts, we also noticed that people don't get the opportunity to know each other.
And so to combat this problem, we created Open Education Down Under OER. We love a good pun, Australasian case studies. And so it was actually the brainchild of a couple of our colleagues in the OEPSIG, Angie Williamson and Alice Letchford. You'll see they're also on the editorial team for the book as well. You can check it out via the QR code on the screen or the URL there. But this OER is the result of a collaboration between the OEP-SIG that I mentioned at the start, which is a grassroots community organization of people interested in open ed. We're currently around 280 members, and also in collaboration with the Call OER Collective, which is a peak professional body for university libraries in Australia and Aotearoa, New Zealand. So we've got the grassroots community with the professional organization collaborating to create this text. And so the book is a peer-reviewed, openly licensed curation of case studies comprising scholarly contributions from professionals, including librarians, researchers, learning and teaching teams, and engaged open education practitioners across Australia. And the work really provides practical examples of open educational practices, which can be adapted by readers for use in their own contexts. The book is really a community-led solution to make our communities and our work more visible by unifying it in a structured format that retains the broad diversity of voices. We really lent into the strengths of OER for the text, and that's because it can provide both that structure and flexibility of form. So we have a consistent layout across all the chapters, but we also include embedded podcasts where relevant, and we'll talk a bit more about that later. And obviously the licensing means that it's reusable and adaptable, which feeds our goals as well. And our community brought broad expertise to the project, as well as included people at multiple levels of institutional seniority. That was really useful. So people from senior managers to non-managers, it gave us diverse perspectives on the practical and strategic direction of the text because they could see into different pockets of institutions. So this project was massive. We had contributions from all mainland states and territories in Australia, wrangling 56 authors on a rather ambitious timeline. From ideation to completion, I think we had about a year as we were adamant to launch the book at the 2024 OE Global Conference, as it was in Australia for the first time. And we were absolutely not about to let that opportunity for visibility pass us by. But we did it, and we're continuing to do it. And we're going to share the strategies and tools that we used to do that with you. So as I mentioned, it was a completely community-led solution, and we'll expand on what that looks like in practice in a bit. But the other part of this that was key was our collaboration with the Call OER Collective, as while we in the OEP-SIG developed the concepts for the book, Call really gave us the infrastructure to get our idea off the ground. So things like access to a publishing platform, which in this case is Pressbooks, and essential documentation like a memorandum of understanding for all those 56 authors, and workflow spreadsheets, but also a great list of contacts, as the collective taps into 95% of universities across Australia and Aotearoa, New Zealand. So there's a huge Rolodex that we can contact for authors, peer reviewers, that kind of thing. So without that early support, it would have been a much slower process to see this idea to fruition.
And the second strategy that we'd like to share with you is around the diversity of the expertise. I'm going to talk about editorial team, distributed leadership, and the broad authorship. So as one of the real strengths of the community is that you have that diversity of expertise to draw on. Actually, our editorial team has evolved over time and has always had a broad diversity of expertise because everyone comes from a different professional background. For example, I'm a learning designer, Ash is a librarian. I've also had a copyright expert and copy editor on that team. Distributed leadership is another strong one here. With community-led projects comes the double edge of sustainability. On the one hand, due to the voluntary nature of the work, the project saw a lot of staff turnover. However, on the other hand, ensuring everyone was involved in decision-making and stewardship of the work meant progress was maintained regardless of the turnover or who was specifically leading. The last one is around that broad authorship that we have. Ash mentioned that we have more than 56 authors, and that number brings a breadth of authors from different specialties. The interesting thing here is that we have so many chapters, brought a wonderful blend of third space professionals and academics working together on authoring the case studies. This also brings the important elements to the design of the case studies, where professional staff could contribute with not only the content, but also the design, the presentation, for example, developing interactive elements, visualization of the content, and ensuring the case studies actually meet the objectives that are listed. The next one, the third one in this group of strategies we have for you today is the visible communities. Another strategy we used to bring this book together quickly was to make visible communities we knew existed, but weren't yet aware of each other. So we worked on that. One of our main goals was to create a space where all these voices could come together and actually hear each other. So we reached out through our existing networks to engage as many people as we could, and to grow, of course, the networks further. And what's been even great is that this reach continues to help us even after publication, because now we have at least 56 people, or the authors here, who are just as invested in promoting the book as we are.
And on a slightly more technical note, we made the strategic choice to design the text with a unified structure to unearth the clear themes or topics, and to provide our readership with a smooth experience when navigating the case studies. So that is, the book is presented in a consistent format from chapter to chapter through the layout, the general heading structure, and key components. And you can see some of those popping up on the screen. While also retaining that diversity of voices by allowing authors to interpret chapter templates and use them primarily as a guide rather than a rule. And as an aside, we've included many of these templates in the appendix of the published book, so feel free to go and reuse those in your own projects, and let us know if there are any other templates or things you want us to add into that section of the book. So we invited our community to participate in the peer review process. We offered support in several ways. So we created a reviewer toolkit, which included reviewer guidelines and a template. And this was a structured guide that outlines the key criteria for feedback. It enabled an expansion on feedback as well. People could add comments directly to the document themselves via Google Docs. And we provided at-elbow support as well if there are any technical issues there. We also ensured that the incentives are really clear and explicitly mentioned. So because, when we're asking someone to peer review a text, often the first thought is, who needs more work to do, especially when it's unpaid work to do. And so we framed this really as a great opportunity to connect with like-minded peers from the Australasian region, to exchange ideas about open ed, gain insights into how it's evolving and in the learning and teaching space. And we also provided the extrinsic motivation of acknowledging reviewers in the chapters themselves. So we engaged in open peer review, which also just is one of our principles. So it's one of our values. But we listed the peer reviewers in the chapter of each chapter, as well as a section in the book as well that just lists everybody. And once you have the slides, you'll be able to click on this link so you can actually go and see the LinkedIn post to see the call for peer reviewers that we created. Moving on to tools. Every giant multi-pronged project needs robust tools underpinning it. And before I started co-leading this project with Mace, we were lucky enough to have Riley McLennan from Queensland University of Technology co-leading the project. And we were lucky because she set us up with several awesome project documents using the Google Suite. And projects at this scale require close attention to a multitude of details, moving parts, overlapping priorities and timelines. And we had a super firm deadline of a week label. And so we used Google Sheets to track the project, the progress of the overall project. We used it again to keep track of the peer review process. And Google Sheets, if you've never used it, has all these awesome little tools in there, like adding tokens, tagging people, conditional formatting is a dream. You can really do a lot of cool stuff to your heart's content. We use Google Docs to create and share the Memorandum of Understanding, peer review guide, other templates. And for us, just keeping it simple like that was great. These are tools that are really easy to use. and keeping it all in the one ecosystem, in this case, Google, was very helpful because it meant that everything integrated into itself. It was institution agnostic as well. So it didn't matter where somebody came from because we're all from different institutions. Everybody could access the documents as required. And when we created the original documents, we were mindful of future use. And so we've been able to reuse a lot of these materials in the later submission rounds for the book. And we've just completed another chapter submission round now, where we've been able to reuse a lot. It's been very helpful and saved us a lot of time.
Okay, so this slide is really to summarize what we have been talking about in terms of the strategies. We talked about community-led collaboration. We talked about diversity of expertise, unified structure, visible communities, and peer review. And Ash lastly mentioned the project management tools that we have used. Hope you're following up to this point. Now, what I'm going to share with you is a slide that, sorry, that one, that has some stats, some numbers. The first one, I'm going to focus on the active users. It shows approximately 2,000 active users, but I just want to mention that this is a 6 months data from the launch of the book until July 20 this year, basically 2025. So we're talking about 2,000 active users here, which shows a strong actually indication that the resource being reached is reaching broad audience across Australian higher education sectors and beyond, which is great. Page reviews is the second indicator there, which is 7,300 page views, showing consistent engagement over time. You can see there is like a burst at the launch, and there's another burst around April. This is when we hosted another session. So of course, people will be more interested to see that, but you can also see that consistency across the timeline. The resource downloads is another interesting one. In the 6 months period after the launch, it was 156 downloads, which is great. Tells us that people actually not only browsing online, but also reusing and referencing, which is something good to see. Now, the other thing that I would like to share with you today is the feedback that we've received. It's nice to see that impact early on. So I've got a couple of comments here from the first one from a student she said that that book has actually helped her in her studies, which is something great to hear. That the other comment that I have here for you is from an academic. Now, one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we achieve in this project is to boosting the academics' voice. Now, in Australia, most people talk about open educational practices are professional staff, promoting, advocating, etc. Academics doing great work in open education. However, there is no unified platform to showcase their adoption of open education and open education practices. So boosting academics' voice, as you can see here, Sarah Steen from Deakin University is actually started to advocate for open education, similar to the work that we're doing. When she said that when she's passionately sharing the chapter, when people actually ask her for advice about open education, which was something really nice to see. I think there is another feedback from James Cook University. Claire said that that book has actually contributed to the awareness of her team. So that impact that we could see and realize in library teams was also very fulfilling. I think these are the two slides I wanted to share with you about the feedback.
Yeah, and our latest chapters in this collection have been recently published. Recently meaning literally last week, so they're hot off the press. We're very proud of continuing to grow this work and expand on important areas such as authentic assessment and artificial intelligence. So you can see the little screenshots of the titles there. And there'll be further promotion of those chapters soon, but if you go to the book, you'll be able to see them right now. And soon to come as well, you'll notice that the title of the book was Australasian case studies. We've really been talking about Australian case studies. There was always the intention to expand into Aotearoa New Zealand as well, and we will be next year. So very excited to see some chapters coming in from there as well. And the last key point really that I want to cover is Around halfway through this year, Mason and I decided to start a podcast to maintain the momentum of this work. Because again, our goal has always been to increase the visibility of the work happening in our region. So taking it cross-platform and multimedia was a good step to reach another audience. We wanted the case studies to continue to live in a different format and provide further authentic experience to our readers. So for this work, we invited chapter authors to be our podcast guests, empowering them with a further boost to their voice and their work. Things have been going really well, though a bit slow because we are doing a million things. However, a really exciting part of this podcast is that only 2.5 episodes in, and we're already seeing the impact. We had a colleague share with us that our first podcast guest, Julian Pakai, as a direct result of being featured on our podcast, has been invited to Keynote and Education Conference in Australia. So it's another strategy to consider. Don't let the OER be the final work. Consider how it can be adapted or built upon or transformed to find new audiences and further achieve your goals of impact. And at every stage, collaboration has been key to success. So look around, who can you work with? Who can you exchange ideas with? Lean on each other to build success. And so with that, we've wrapped up our little whirlwind of strategies and tools for a successful living massive OER project.
Wonderful. And as we promised you at the start, you'll be able to access all the, you have access to the slides, the links that we talked about in the resources that we talked about, the tools and the book itself and the podcast. And you are most welcome to get in touch with us, Ash at Ash the Librarian, all things. And may you be able to find me in LinkedIn. Thank you very much. And now we would love to hear if you your comments, questions. I can see Kat put a comment that this resource has been so useful in her institution. And she refers to it frequently. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. Yeah, we do have a couple minutes available if there are any questions or anything. Thank you for the love.
Thank you, Maggie. And Kaywin.
Right.
Anyone in your institutions or wherever you're working have done something similar? It'll be nice to if you share a link to your work. I know it's the end of the day in Denver, so that's no pressure, but we really appreciate your time and listening to us.
We're on both ends of the day. We've got the end of the day here, the beginning of the day there.
Yeah, it
we're
is the beginning of the day
tired
for
no
me.
matter what time it is. All right. Well, I think we'll end the recording there.